The old gladiator sat alone in his cell, looking at the scars on his hands. Each one told a story. Each one reminded him of blood and pain and survival. His name was Marcus Varro, and he had killed more men in the arena than he could count. Now, at 53 years old, he should have been dead long ago. The cell was small and dark. A single torch burned in the hallway outside, casting weak orange light through the iron bars. Marcus could hear the other gladiators sleeping in their cells. Young men, mostly, strong and fast and eager to prove themselves. They did not know what waited for them in the sand. Marcus had been a gladiator for 31 years. He was captured as a young soldier in a war between Earth and the Keshan Empire. The Keshans were not human. They stood 7 feet tall with gray skin and 3 eyes. They valued entertainment above all else, and their favorite entertainment was watching humans fight and die. But Marcus did not die. He refused to die. And now he was the oldest gladiator in the history of the arena. The crowds loved him. They called him the Iron Man of Earth. They threw flowers when he entered the sand. They screamed his name when he raised his sword. The Keshans hated him. A sound came from the hallway, footsteps, heavy boots on stone. Marcus did not move. He had learned long ago that movement attracted attention. Stillness was survival. 2 guards stopped outside his cell. They wore the black armor of the arena masters, with electric spears in their hands. Between them walked a figure Marcus had never seen before. It was not Keshan. It was not human. It was something else entirely. The creature stood about 6 feet tall, with a body made of metal and flesh woven together. Its left arm was mechanical, with fingers that ended in sharp blades. Its right eye glowed red in the darkness. Half its face was human, scarred and twisted. The other half was chrome and glass. "This is him?" the creature asked. Its voice was like 2 voices speaking at once, one human, one machine. "Yes, Commander," said one of the guards. "Marcus Varro, the veteran." The creature studied Marcus through the bars. Marcus looked back without fear. He had seen many strange things in his years. This metal man was just another enemy to understand. "Open the cell," the creature said. The guards hesitated. "Commander, the regulations say." "I said open it." The guard pressed his hand against the lock. The bars slid apart with a grinding sound. The creature walked into the cell. It moved smoothly like oil over water. Each step was perfectly balanced, perfectly controlled. Marcus remained seated on his stone bench. He did not stand. He would not show submission. "You are the one they call the Iron Man," the creature said. It was not a question. "I am Marcus Varro. I am Commander Zex. I lead the Cyborg Legion of the Unified Empire." The creature tilted its head, studying Marcus like a scientist might study an insect. "Do you know what cyborgs are?" "Part human, part machine." "We are the future. We are what your species should have become." Zex walked closer. Marcus could smell oil and blood. "The Keshan Empire has fallen. The Unified Empire has taken its place. We have conquered 700 worlds in 3 years." Marcus said nothing. He had learned that silence was often more powerful than words. "Tomorrow, the arena will reopen under new management," Zex continued. "My cyborg soldiers will fight the remaining gladiators. It will be a demonstration, a showing of our superiority. 50 cyborg warriors against your entire gladiator population." "How many gladiators remain?" Marcus asked. 312. Marcus did a quick calculation in his head. 6 gladiators for each cyborg. Those were not good odds, but they were not impossible either. "You think you can win," Zex said. The human half of its face smiled. The mechanical half did not move. "I can see it in your eyes. You still have hope." "I have survived 31 years in the sand," Marcus said. "Hope has nothing to do with it." "Survival is not victory." Zex turned and walked toward the cell door. "Tomorrow, I will personally tear out your heart in front of the crowd. The Iron Man of Earth will fall. Your species will see that flesh is weak." Marcus stood slowly. His old bones creaked, his muscles ached, but his eyes were sharp and his hands were steady. "I have fought aliens from 12 different worlds," Marcus said. "I have killed champions that stood twice my height. I have survived poison, fire, and beasts with teeth like swords. You are not the first enemy to promise my death, Commander. You will not be the last." Zex paused at the door. For a moment, something flickered across the human half of its face. Uncertainty, perhaps, or maybe just curiosity. "You truly believe you can defeat us?" "I believe that I will fight until my heart stops beating. Everything else is noise." Zex laughed. It was an ugly sound, half human cackle and half mechanical screech. "I look forward to silencing that noise, old man." The creature left. The guard sealed the cell. Marcus was alone again in the darkness. He sat back down on his bench and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would be the most important fight of his life. Not because of the cyborgs, not because of the crowds, but because of what it would mean. For 31 years, Marcus had been a symbol. Humans were scattered across 1,000 conquered worlds, working as slaves and servants and entertainment. They had lost hope. They had forgotten what it meant to be human. They had forgotten that their species once ruled Earth and dreamed of the stars. Tomorrow, Marcus would remind them. He opened his eyes and looked at his hands again. Old hands, scarred hands, but still strong, still capable of holding a sword. He began to plan. The gladiators needed to work together. They could not fight the cyborgs as individuals. Cyborgs were stronger, faster, and felt less pain, but they were also machines in part, and machines had patterns. They had limitations. Marcus had watched the creature move. It was smooth and precise, too smooth, too precise. Real combat was chaos. It was blood and dirt and screaming. It was making decisions in a heartbeat when your eyes burned with sweat and your lungs screamed for air. Could these cyborgs handle chaos? Could they adapt when their plans fell apart? Tomorrow, Marcus would find out. He lay down on his bench and closed his eyes. Sleep did not come easily. It never did before a fight. But he had learned to rest his body even when his mind raced. Outside, the fortress was quiet. The other gladiators slept on, unaware of what was coming. They would learn soon enough. Marcus thought about Earth. He had not seen it in over 3 decades. Did anyone there still remember him? Did anyone care that an old soldier had survived so long in alien chains? It did not matter. Marcus did not fight for glory or for memory. He fought because fighting was all he knew. He fought because every day he lived was a victory against those who wanted him dead. Tomorrow he would fight again. And if he died, he would die on his feet, with a sword in his hand, reminding the galaxy what humans were made of. The torch in the hallway flickered and went out. Darkness filled the cell. Marcus welcomed it like an old friend. Dawn would come soon enough. When Marcus woke, the sun was already high. Orange light streamed through a small window near the ceiling of his cell. He could hear shouting in the hallways. Guards were moving quickly, their boots pounding on the stone floors. He stood and stretched. His body protested. His shoulders were stiff. His knees ached. His back felt like someone had tied knots in his spine during the night. But he forced himself to move. Pain was familiar. Pain was an old companion. He had learned long ago that a body in motion stayed in motion. Stop moving and you were dead. A young gladiator appeared at his cell door. His name was Tomas, and he had been fighting in the arena for only 2 years. He was strong and quick, with sharp eyes and steady hands. Marcus had trained him himself. "Master," Tomas said, his voice shook, "have you heard?" "I have heard." "What do we do? They say these cyborgs cannot be killed. They say they feel no pain and fear nothing." Marcus walked to the bars and looked at Tomas. The young man's face was pale. His hands trembled at his sides. "Everything can be killed," Marcus said. "Everything has a weakness. We must find theirs." But they are machines. They are half machines, the other half is human, that half can bleed, that half can fear. Marcus gripped the bars. Listen to me, Tomas. I need you to gather the others, every gladiator who can hold a weapon. Bring them to the training yard. Tell them Marcus commands it. Tomas hesitated. The guards will not allow. The guards are busy preparing for the fight. They will not notice. Go now, quickly. The young man nodded and ran. Marcus watched him go, then turned back to his cell. He needed to prepare himself. In the corner was a bucket of water. Marcus splashed it on his face and chest. The cold shocked his body awake. He did not have armor or weapons. Those would come later. But he had his mind and he had his experience. He began to exercise, push-ups, sit-ups, stretches. The movements were automatic. He had done them every morning for 31 years. They kept his body ready. They kept his blood flowing. An hour later, a guard came to his cell. The man looked nervous. He kept glancing down the hallway as if expecting something to attack. You are to go to the training yard, the guard said, by order of Commander Zex. I was planning to go there anyway. The guard unlocked the cell. Marcus stepped out and walked toward the training yard. The hallways were crowded with soldiers, not Keshan guards anymore. These were cyborgs like Zex, metal and flesh combined. They watched Marcus with glowing eyes as he passed. Marcus ignored them. He kept his back straight and his pace steady. Show no fear. That was the first rule. The training yard was a large open space surrounded by high walls. Sand covered the ground, just like the arena. Wooden weapons hung on racks along the walls. Straw dummies stood in rows, their bodies torn and cut from years of practice. 300 gladiators waited in the yard, men and women from a dozen different planets. Humans mostly, but also some aliens who had been captured and forced to fight. They stood in clusters, whispering to each other. When Marcus entered, they fell silent. He walked to the center of the yard and turned in a slow circle, looking at each face. Some he knew well, others he had only seen from a distance, but they were all his brothers and sisters in the sand. They had all bled for the entertainment of others. You know what is coming, Marcus said. His voice carried across the yard. Tomorrow we fight the cyborgs, 50 of them against all of us. We are going to die, someone muttered from the back. Maybe, Marcus said, but we are gladiators. Death is our business. The question is not whether we will die. The question is how we will live until that moment. He paused. The crowd was watching him with frightened eyes. I have fought in this arena for 31 years. I have seen champions fall and weaklings survive. I have learned that strength is not about muscle or speed. It is about will. It is about refusing to stop when your body screams for rest. He walked toward the weapon racks and picked up a wooden sword. It was light and familiar in his hand. These cyborgs are strong, they are fast, they are dangerous, but they are not gods. They have weaknesses just like us. We must find those weaknesses and use them. What weaknesses? Tomas asked. He had pushed to the front of the crowd. I watched their commander last night. He moved with perfect precision. Every step was calculated. Every motion was smooth. Marcus swung the wooden sword in a slow arc. But that is a weakness, not a strength. The gladiators looked confused. Machines rely on patterns, Marcus explained. They calculate and predict. They expect their enemies to behave in certain ways, but combat is chaos. Combat is unpredictable. If we can surprise them, confuse them, break their patterns, we can hurt them. A woman near the front spoke up. Her name was Lyra. She was a sword dancer from the moon colonies, and she had survived 8 years in the arena. How do we break their patterns? She asked. We fight together, Marcus said. Not as individuals, but as one force. We coordinate, we communicate. We create chaos on purpose. He began to explain his plan. They would divide into groups of 6. Each group would focus on one cyborg at a time. While 3 fighters engaged from the front, 3 would circle and attack from behind. Switch positions constantly. Never stay still. Never be predictable. Their mechanical eyes can track fast movement, Marcus said, but they have blind spots just like we do. The connection between flesh and metal is weak. Aim for the joints. Aim for the places where skin meets chrome. The gladiators listened. Some nodded, others looked doubtful, but they listened. For the rest of the day, Marcus trained them. He divided them into groups. He taught them signals and formations. He pushed them until their muscles burned and their lungs ached. The guards watched from the walls. They did not interfere. Perhaps they thought the training was pointless. Perhaps they wanted to see the gladiators try. As the sun began to set, Marcus called an end to the practice. The gladiators were exhausted but focused. Something had changed in their eyes. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Hope. Marcus gathered them in a circle. His body ached. His voice was hoarse from shouting commands, but he had one more thing to say. Tomorrow the galaxy will watch us fight. They expect to see humans slaughtered by machines. They expect to see our species humiliated again. He looked around the circle at their tired faces. We will show them something different. We will show them that humans do not break. We do not surrender. We fight until our last breath. He raised his fist for Earth. The gladiators raised their fists for Earth. The sound echoed off the walls and faded into the evening sky. Tomorrow would bring blood and pain and probably death. But tonight, for the first time in years, the gladiators felt like warriors again. Marcus walked slowly back to his cell. His legs were heavy, his arms hung at his sides, but his heart was full. He had done everything he could. Now it was up to the sand to decide. The arena was massive. It stretched across 3 miles of sand, surrounded by seats that rose high into the clouds. 50,000 spectators filled those seats, their voices creating a thunder that shook the ground. Marcus stood at the entrance tunnel with his fellow gladiators. They wore basic armor and carried simple weapons: swords, spears, shields. Nothing fancy, nothing special, just the tools of their trade. Across the sand, the cyborg soldiers waited. They stood in perfect formation, their metal parts gleaming in the bright sun. Each one held a weapon designed for killing. Some had blades built into their arms. Others carried guns that fired energy beams. All of them were staring at the gladiators with cold, glowing eyes. Commander Zek stood at the front of the cyborg formation. Its red eye swept across the gladiators and stopped on Marcus. "Old man," Zek shouted. Its voice was amplified, booming across the arena. "Are you ready to die?" Marcus stepped forward. The crowd noticed and began to chant his name. "Varro, Varro, Varro." The sound washed over him like a wave. "I am ready to fight," Marcus called back. "Are you?" Zex laughed. It was that same ugly sound, half human and half machine. "Your confidence is amusing. Perhaps I will keep you alive long enough to see all your friends die first." The arena master's voice echoed from speakers mounted on the walls. "Citizens of the unified empire, today you will witness the power of progress, flesh against metal, the old way against the new." The crowd roared. "Let the battle begin." A horn sounded, deep and loud. It vibrated through Marcus's bones and set his blood pumping. The cyborgs began to advance. They moved as one unit, their footsteps perfectly synchronized. It was terrifying to watch. They were like a machine made of smaller machines. But Marcus had prepared for this. "Groups," he shouted, "now." The gladiators broke into their assigned teams. 6 fighters in each group. They spread across the sand, creating space between themselves and chaos in the formation. The cyborgs hesitated. Their programming expected the gladiators to charge in a mass. Instead, they were scattering like dust in the wind. "First wave," Marcus called. "Attack the flanks." 20 groups rushed toward the edges of the cyborg formation. Not the center, where the strongest soldiers waited. The edges, where the formation was weakest. The cyborgs turned to face the new threats. Their perfect line broke apart. Some moved left, others moved right. The synchronized movement was gone. Chaos. Marcus smiled grimly. This was what humans were good at. This was where they excelled. In the mess and blood of real combat, where plans fell apart and survival depended on instinct. Second wave struck the middle. More groups charged. They hit the center of the cyborg formation while the machines were still reacting to the flank attacks. The first real contact was brutal. A cyborg swung its blade arm at a gladiator named Jonas. Jonas ducked and rolled. His teammates attacked from both sides, their swords finding the joints where metal met flesh. The cyborg stumbled. Blue fluid leaked from its wounds. It was not blood, but it served the same purpose. The machine was damaged. "Keep moving," Marcus shouted. "Do not stop." The battle spread across the arena. Groups of gladiators surrounded individual cyborgs, attacking in rotating patterns. When one fighter grew tired, another took their place. When a cyborg tried to focus on one enemy, others struck from behind. But the cyborgs were learning. Their mechanical brains processed the new tactics and began to adapt. They started fighting back to back, protecting each other's weak points. They coordinated their attacks, firing energy beams that cut through armor and flesh. Gladiators began to fall. Marcus watched from his position near the center of the field. He had held his group back, waiting for the right moment. Now he saw it. Zex was standing alone, watching the battle with calculating eyes. The other cyborgs had spread out to fight, leaving their commander unprotected. "With me," Marcus said to his group. Tomas was there, and Lyra and 3 other veterans. They had been training for this specific moment. They moved quickly across the sand. Bodies lay scattered around them. The smell of blood and burned metal filled the air. Marcus stepped over fallen friends and fallen enemies, his eyes fixed on Zex. The cyborg commander saw them coming. Its red eye focused on Marcus, and the human half of its face twisted into a smile. "You come to die personally, old man." "I come to end this," Marcus said. Zex raised its blade arm. The metal edge gleamed like a mirror. "Then let us end it." Marcus charged. His group flanked out, surrounding Zex just as they had practiced. But this cyborg was different from the others. It was faster, smarter, more deadly. Zex spun and kicked Lyra across the sand before she could attack. Its blade arm slashed at Tomas, cutting through his shield and scoring a deep wound across his shoulder. 2 more gladiators fell in seconds, their bodies broken by the cyborg's impossible strength. Only Marcus and 1 other veteran remained standing. "You see," Zex said, "it was not even breathing hard. Cyborgs did not breathe. Flesh cannot defeat metal. You are obsolete. Your species is finished." Marcus circled slowly. His mind was racing, analyzing, searching for a weakness. And then he saw it. Zex's movements were fast and precise, but there was a slight delay when the cyborg switched from offense to defense, a fraction of a second where its systems recalculated. It was tiny, almost invisible, but it was there. "Maybe flesh alone cannot defeat metal," Marcus said. He kept circling, keeping Zex's attention on him. The other veteran was moving behind the cyborg, waiting for an opportunity. "But flesh is not all we have." "What else could you possibly have?" "Will," Marcus said. "Determination, the refusal to die." He attacked, not with skill or speed, but with pure aggression. He threw himself at Zex, swinging his sword in wild arcs that had no pattern and no prediction. Zex blocked and countered. Its blade arm sliced across Marcus's side, cutting through armor and skin. Pain exploded through his body. Blood ran down his leg. But Marcus did not stop. He pressed closer, inside Zex's guard, where the long blade arm was less effective. He drove his sword up, aiming for the joint where Zex's mechanical arm connected to its shoulder. The blade found its mark. It sank into the gap between metal and flesh. Blue fluid sprayed across Marcus's face. Zex screamed. It was a horrible sound, both human and machine crying out in pain. The other veteran attacked from behind. His spear punched through Zex's back, seeking the cyborg's power core. Zex fell to its knees. Its red eye flickered. Its blade arm hung useless at its side. "Impossible," it whispered. "You are just humans, you are just flesh." Marcus stood over the fallen cyborg commander. His body was bleeding from a dozen wounds. His vision was starting to blur, but he was still standing. "We are Earth," he said, "and we do not break." He raised his sword and brought it down on Zex's neck. The cyborg's head rolled across the sand. Its body collapsed and lay still. The arena fell silent. Then slowly a sound began to build. The remaining gladiators, wounded and exhausted, raised their weapons. The crowd in the stands started to cheer. The cyborg soldiers looked at their fallen commander. They looked at the gladiators who were still fighting, still refusing to die, and something changed in their mechanical minds. They retreated. One by one, the cyborgs pulled back toward the arena exit. They had been programmed for victory, and victory was no longer certain. Without Zex to lead them, they did not know how to proceed. The gladiators did not pursue. They were too tired, too wounded, but they had won. Marcus fell to his knees in the sand. Blood pooled around him. The world was spinning, growing dark at the edges. Hands grabbed him. Tomas and Lyra and others, lifting him up, carrying him toward the tunnel. "You did it," Tomas said. There were tears in his eyes. "Master, you did it." "We did it," Marcus whispered. "All of us." The crowd was chanting again. "Varro, Varro, Varro," but Marcus could barely hear them. Consciousness was slipping away. Before the darkness took him, he saw something that made him smile. In the stands, humans were standing, not cheering for the spectacle, but for the victory, for the reminder of what their species could do when pushed to the edge. Hope had returned, and that was worth any price. Marcus did not die that day, but it was a close thing. The gladiator medics worked on him for hours. They stitched his wounds and replaced his blood. They held him between life and death while the arena celebrated around them. For 3 days, Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness. When he finally woke fully, he was in a different room, not his cell. This room had real beds and clean sheets and windows that looked out at the sky. Tomas sat by his bedside. The young man's shoulder was bandaged, but he was smiling. "Welcome back, Master." Marcus tried to speak. His throat was dry. Tomas gave him water. "What happened?" Marcus asked when he could talk. "Everything has changed," Tomas said. "The broadcast of our fight was seen across the unified empire. Millions watched the cyborg army retreat. Millions saw humans stand and win." Marcus closed his eyes. He had hoped the fight would inspire people, but he had not expected this. "There have been uprisings," Tomas continued. "On 7 different worlds, human slaves have revolted. The unified empire is scrambling to contain the rebellions." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They are afraid, Master. For the first time in years, they are afraid of us." Marcus opened his eyes, and the arena closed. The unified empire does not want any more demonstrations. They have released all gladiators who were captured from human-controlled worlds. "Released?" Tomas nodded. "Ships are coming to take us home, to Earth." Home? Marcus had not thought about home in decades. He had tried not to think about it. The memory was too painful. "How long until the ships arrive?" he asked. 2 more days. Can you walk by then?" Marcus looked at his bandaged body. His wounds were serious, but he had survived worse. "I will walk. Even if I have to crawl, I will be on that ship." Tomas smiled. "I knew you would say that." Over the next 2 days, Marcus pushed himself to recover. He walked the hallways of the medical building, his steps slow and painful at first, then stronger. The other gladiators followed his example. They had won an impossible victory. They were not going to let their injuries stop them now. When the ships arrived, they were human ships, not captured vessels crewed by slaves, but free ships from Earth's growing resistance movement. The sight of them descending through the clouds brought tears to Marcus's eyes. A woman in a flight suit met them at the landing pad. She was young, with dark hair and determined eyes. "I am Captain Maria Varro," she said. "I command the Liberation Fleet." Marcus stared at her. "Varro." "My grandfather was a soldier named Marcus Varro," she said, her voice caught. "He was captured before I was born. My mother told me stories about him. I never thought—" She stopped, unable to continue. Marcus reached out and touched her face. His granddaughter. He had a family after all these years. "I thought everyone had forgotten," he whispered. "We never forgot." Maria took his hand in both of hers. "We watched the fight. The whole galaxy watched. You showed us what we had lost, what we could be again." The trip back to Earth took 3 weeks. Marcus spent the time recovering and getting to know his granddaughter. She told him about the resistance movement that had been building in the shadows, small acts of rebellion that had been growing larger each year. "Your fight was the spark," Maria said. "People who had given up hope started to believe again. The uprisings are spreading faster than the Empire can contain them." "The Empire is strong," Marcus said. "They have armies and technology and resources. But we have something they do not understand." Maria looked at him with fierce pride. "We have you, and we have the memory of what you did." When the ship entered Earth's orbit, Marcus went to the observation deck. The blue and green sphere filled the window. Clouds drifted across oceans. Mountains rose above forests. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Other gladiators joined him, Tomas and Lyra and dozens of others. They stood in silence, looking at the home they had thought they would never see again. "We are back," Tomas said softly. "No," Marcus corrected him. He put his hand on the young man's shoulder. "We are finally home." The ship descended through the atmosphere. Marcus watched the clouds rush past, the ground coming closer, the details of the world becoming clear. They landed in a field outside a small city. Thousands of people waited there, cheering and waving as the gladiators stepped off the ship. Humans of all ages, free and determined, welcoming their heroes home. Marcus walked slowly down the ramp. His legs were weak and his wounds still ached, but he stood tall. He had earned this moment. A little girl ran up to him with flowers in her hands. She looked up at him with wide eyes. "Are you the Iron Man?" she asked. Marcus knelt down to her level. It hurt, but he did it anyway. "I am just a man," he said, "a man who refused to give up." "My daddy says you saved everyone." Marcus took the flowers gently. "No, I reminded everyone that they could save themselves." The girl hugged him. Her small arms wrapped around his neck, and for a moment Marcus forgot about the pain and the scars and the 31 years of blood. He remembered what it felt like to be human. The celebration lasted for days. There was food and music and laughter. People danced in the streets. Soldiers told stories of the uprisings that were spreading across the galaxy. But Marcus knew the fight was not over. The unified empire would not surrender easily. There would be more battles, more sacrifice, more death. On the 3rd night, he found Maria looking up at the stars. "They will come for us," Maria said. "When they regroup, they will try to crush us." "Yes," Marcus agreed, "they will." "What do we do?" Marcus stood beside her. He was old and tired and broken in more ways than he could count. But his spirit was as strong as ever. "We do what humans have always done," he said. "We fight, we adapt, we survive, and we never ever give up." Maria nodded. "The resistance is growing. Every day more people join. Ships, weapons, soldiers. We are building an army." Then build it well. Marcus put his hand on her shoulder. And remember what the cyborgs taught us. Machines can be beaten. Empires can fall. Nothing is permanent except the will to keep going. Will you lead us? Marcus thought about the question. He was old. His body was failing. There were younger, stronger people who could do the job. But then he remembered the little girl with the flowers. He remembered the faces of the gladiators as they saw Earth for the first time. He remembered what it felt like to stand in the sand and refuse to break. I will fight beside you, he said, for as long as I can, and when I can no longer fight, I will teach, and when I can no longer teach, I will watch and remember. Maria smiled. That is enough. It will have to be. They stood together in the darkness, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the cyborg armies were preparing for revenge. Somewhere out there, the war was just beginning. But here on Earth, humanity was waking up. The despair that had crushed them for generations was lifting. In its place, something new was growing. Strength, determination, hope. Marcus Varro had spent 31 years as a slave and a gladiator. He had fought countless battles and killed more enemies than he could count. He had been beaten, broken, and left for dead more times than he could remember. But he had never surrendered. And now, standing on his homeworld with his granddaughter at his side and a free people at his back, he understood what all that suffering had been for. Not for glory, not for victory, but for this moment, this reminder of what humanity could achieve when they refused to accept defeat. The first star appeared in the darkening sky, then another, then thousands. Marcus looked up at them and made a silent promise. The cyborgs had thought they could crush humanity beneath their metal boots. They had thought that flesh was weak and machines were strong. They were wrong. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was stubborn and creative and impossible to predict. Humanity had a fire that no machine could understand. And now that fire was spreading. From the ashes of despair, triumph had been born, and it would burn across the galaxy until every slave was free and every tyrant had fallen. This was the promise of humanity. This was the legacy of the veteran gladiator. This was just the beginning.